Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete vs. Anxiety here, the mental health podcast breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. But guys, before we get into today's episode, let's talk a little bit about the Patreon. That's right, you're right, the Oracle Talk Radio Network Patreon. And you guys are like, hey Pete, how much is that going to cost us? Let me check the judges. Judges? They said $1. $1. That's right, guys. Just $1 a month gets you access to the Oracle Talk Radio Network and all the bonus contents is there. I have a bunch of plenty of episodes I'm planning to put behind that wall. You know, my buddy Bree that you met from Bree and Joel episode, that is the #1 viewed episode. She's going to come back and we're going to have another private conversation about her story. And she's going to tell me, hell, I'm going to even tell my own story behind the Patreon wall. I'm going to record an episode just by myself. You're going to hear everything from A to Z about my life. You're going to find out how I got here to where I was at when I started to where I am now. Why not? Listen. You want that? $1. That's all it gets you. $1 gets you access into the Pete. You get to find out the mind of Pete, what happened with Pete, all that. Anyways, I love that. Also want to let you know that the Oracle Talk Radio Network has their own radio app. That's right. The Oracle Talk Radio Network app. What does it get you? It gets you access to the shows, obviously. When we're live doing our thing here on the Oracle Talk Radio Network, you can listen to us on the go. So there's no excuse really now why you haven't been there or why you can't listen to it. All right? So 10 a.m. Mondays, I want you either on here supporting this channel, or I want you on there supporting our Oracle Talk Network, downloading their app and listening that way. There's no excuse now. We don't have to hear nothing. Well, OP didn't have none. You had time. You had plenty of options to get there. But anyways, lastly, I want to talk about my special nonprofit that I'm a part of that I joined forces with. They're raising mental health awareness. Trying to get people out there to talk more about, mental health. That's why we're here in the first place. Anyways, that's why Pete vs. Anxiety even begins, is because we're trying to educate people. So if you text the code podcast to 44321, then put my name right there. See it coming right across? Then you too can help support mental health awareness, guys. And while you're there, why don't you donate $1? Just $1. That's, $1 doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? You can donate $1, 4 quarters. 10 dimes, blah, blah, blah. However we keep going on this thing, but it's all the same thing, basically. Guys, just $1. And guys, as always, please enjoy the show. And don't forget to like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. I love it. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great one. Welcome into another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. You should recognize my guest on the right side here. She was actually on week 3 before we had a blunder of a disaster. Miss Vanessa, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing really good, actually. Like I said, I was telling you off before we even got on here. This show's taken off since the last time we spoke.
So good.
And this time we shouldn't have the close to amount of problems that we had before. So
okay. Well, I believe in divine timing, so it wasn't really meant to be complete then, and we'll complete it today.
Well, definitely, and I know the last time when we were talking, you were still doing the other podcast, which I think you're still doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you have your new one called the Psych Gym, which is starting now, and you're finally releasing some content for it. And I know when we would talk last, that was the one you were starting, and we were discussing it and things like that. So how have you been since then?
Yeah, I've been good. I've been busy. I've been busy with a lot of different things. I think, for anybody who knows about like expanding, and you obviously do because it's where you're at right now.
Right.
When you decide to do it and it's supported by God, the universe, whatever it is that you believe in, here comes the flood of all of the things, right? So then you become very busy sorting through what you're going to do. So I've been busy, but it's been that good kind of busy, not the kind that makes you feel completely overwhelmed. It's very inspired. So thank you for asking.
No, I agree that. I agree. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. I'm getting a lot of things on the reel, and like I told you, we're out to 2025 in July officially as of this morning. Someone finally took another spot. So, and this thing's just blown up from there. Like, I'm just still trying to figure a lot of things out as I go. I have a Patreon now where I'm building a whole nother level of content, and I have a little special I'm planning there too. Is another show I have planned that I'm doing with someone else that I'm going to co-host. I'm going to not co-host, but I'm going to produce, and she's going to run basically interviews. It's got to do a lot of sobriety. So that'll be coming up soon. It should drop in December, but and all that kind of stuff. So it's been great.
Yeah. That's great. I'm happy. I'm happy for you. I feel like when you decide to do something that's for the greater good, and it takes off like that, there's nothing but up for everybody. You know what I mean? Like being able to create that content and have people be able to hear that and hopefully heal some things. I'm all for that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great when you hear other people's stories because it inspires other people to want to be a part of it too. Because 'cause they're like, "Well, I heard that person's story, man. Now I could be that person too, sitting there saying my
Mhm.
sharing my story and my experiences and what I deal with, and, and all that kinda stuff." And that's the great thing about this is that we're trying to raise mental health awareness for everybody, and trying to make it a real thing now. And it's there's a demand, obviously, given the fact that this show is blowing up beyond proportion of where I thought it would have been when I started this thing in August, as
Yeah.
an idea, and now with the network and everything else, and it's just taken off so fast. It's been a kind of a whirlwind experience, but at the same time, I'm learning a lot of things, and then, it's great meeting new people and getting to talk to new people every week, and get them let them tell their stories, and they all feel empowered because it's like, here someone letting me tell my story, and they're not telling me stop, they're just letting me
Right.
go.
Yeah, yeah, not telling you all the things that you're doing wrong or all the reasons why you shouldn't feel that way, and, like, all the things. I mean, we have a continuing mental health crisis no matter what we seem to think we're doing,
Yeah,
like, "Oh, yeah, we got all these drugs on the market, we've got, we got therapists everywhere," like, well, something's not working because we're still not okay. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
there's still a lot of us that are not okay, so
Yeah,
I
and
love
it's
that and being
okay
part of
not to
that
be okay.
movement.
It's a big thing too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because it's normal, I mean, I think that that's what, when we talk about, mental health and mental illness, there's something that gets crossed in between saying, "Well, I'm not supposed to feel this way." Like, we are supposed to feel a myriad of emotions. We're supposed to, we're humans.
Yeah,
It's the idea that we're not kind of taught how to move through them that gets them stuck, and then we start to have our issues with it. And people are like, "Oh, well, you should learn how to do that." Yeah,
right.
I would love to. I don't wanna be here. Teach me.
Exactly. Right? People have a lot of opinions, and then when it comes to those opinions, it's like, "Okay, that's great, but how do we get there?" "Well, I don't
Yeah,
know. You just came up with this idea. You don't know how to follow through the plan? No, you're the one
right.
who brought this to me. You don't know what you're talking about?"
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Pretty
So,
wild
do
out
you
there.
go alright, so, Vanessa, do you wanna re-educate some of the people on some of your backgrounds to have a little bit more? Because I know it's been a little while since we last talked, and just, give them a little idea where you're coming from so they know.
Yeah, sure. So obviously I'm a therapist, counselor, intuitive counselor. I call it intuitive counselor because I've learned how to use my actual intuitive gifts in my sessions, which is fantastic because it just brings a little bit of um an extra layer that you don't get from like the book smart type
Yeah,
thing. And I love what I do. It's fantastic. I get to see different kinds of people all the time. It's very, it's definitely my calling. And then on the backside of that, part of why I feel like I'm pretty successful is because I've had to go through my own challenges and continue to go through my own challenges. So what I'm teaching, I'm doing.
yeah,
And so like when I saw just the name of your podcast, I was like, "Oh, isn't that the truth? Pete
right.
versus
Yeah,
anxiety,"
because it's
right?
an
Like,
everyday battle. I mean, really, honestly, it is. Some days it's good, and other days it's a war. You better buckle in because it's about to get ugly. And
yeah.
and then if you factor some of the other things, like, I have depression, so some days it's even worse. And I got two
Mhm.
things against me, and it's a tag team 2-on-1, and I'm getting beat up by both of them. And then it
Yeah.
just depends, and every day is a different adventure for me. So, and I'm sure it's for a lot of people like that, a lot of different things they deal with, and all the crazy stuff that's out there. There's a wide list of things that I didn't even know existed until I started really digging in a little bit and start looking at things. And my wife had a psychology book I've been reading that has a bunch of different disorders and things in it. I've been studying, trying to better educate myself. That way, I know a little more about some of these as these people come on and share these experiences.
Yeah.
I'll have a little more knowledge of what they're talking about instead of just kind of sitting there bright eyed, like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah. Well, what's amazing about that is that you'll probably still be like that because, for me, I've been doing this for a long time and I don't diagnose. I mean, I don't use any of those clinical tools in my practice anymore. Because I feel like it's just too specific of like, oh well, this is what everybody with anxiety has, or this is what everybody with PTSD has, and it's like absolutely not. Like you have to sit down with the person in order to know how it works in their lives. So you can know everything, you can know the DSM back to front, but when you sit down with somebody is when you really understand how that issue is affecting their lives. So that label, just kind of falls to the wayside so that you can actually, get into the specifics of how that is affecting somebody's life.
Yeah, and that's a good point you say that because it affects everybody differently, and that's a big thing I tell people too. It's like everything affects everybody in a different way, and that's a
Mhm.
great thing with the show is that they can come on, they can share their story, they can tell everybody how it affects them versus what
Mhm.
everybody else thinks it is, and then that whole like cookie cutter idea of this is what it is, and that's the only what it is. I'm like, no, it
Yeah.
presents in different ways, and it just like anything, it shows up in different ways. There's different symptoms, people deal with different things and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, and that's the whole idea behind this is just I'm just an average person, so I have no advice for you. I could just tell you what I experienced. That's it, and I could educate other people on what I learned from other people, and things
Yeah.
like that. And that's the great thing about it is because you're coming to talk
Mhm.
to a person, you're not talking to somebody who's going to sit here and analyze everything you're saying to them,
Yeah.
and things like that. And some people don't like that idea that they're just like, oh, yeah, I'm under the microscope already because they already know
For sure.
too much more than I do. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, I'm not that person, unfortunately. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and you get an opportunity, I think, to position yourself as you're learning, and you because you do. I mean, this is I've been doing this for so long and sitting down with so many people. There's a lot of things that I've learned, but you position yourself to let the people understand. Just because I know all those things doesn't mean I know you. So I'm fresh. You're
Yeah.
sitting down and I'm fresh. There is no such thing as analyzing because that's pointless. The analyzation is me just listening to you tell me about yourself.
Yeah,
Right? Like, I'm
exactly.
learning about you every time I sit down
Yeah, and
with
and that's the thing
every
too. When you say
person.
that, the whole thing about analyzing people, it's like the first meeting with any therapist. They sit down and just try and better understand the situation of what you're dealing with. Now, they may be able to tell a lot of things right out the first conversation, and it's
Mhm.
just that gives into their experience of things and things like that. But you telling them a lot of times they could identify faster what it is you're dealing with, and sometimes it's just helpful for someone to know, hey, this is what you're dealing with, and that way they can figure out what best way to go address how they're dealing with these things, or how to handle these things in their own way. Because if therapy ain't for you, there's so many things out there now that you can do that's just crazy.
Mhm.
What is it? Quantum healing was one of my Patreon guests she was talking about, and I'm
Yes.
actually going to do it too. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. She sent me
Awesome.
a message back and said, hey, you should try this. All right, so I have to meditate for 2 weeks ahead of time, 15 minutes a day.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right, it sounds weird to me. It sounds weird because I'm like, okay, well, why not? Let's give it a shot. Because I'm curious.
Yeah.
I want to see what happens. And she did mention though, she goes at the end of the email, she goes, well, if it's a negative experience, don't say anything. I'm like, how's it going to be negative, honestly? Like if you have that much hate that you don't like how something worked out, why does it have to always be a negative experience? It could just be, well, I tried it, it wasn't for me. I didn't see the results as great as I wanted them to be. I mean, because I don't know what to
Mhm.
expect when I'm going into this. I have no idea what to expect other than what she was telling me. And she says that they basically hypnotize you and then they
Yeah.
break through that first wall that your protective area of your mind and they go deep in your mind and start asking you
Mhm.
questions. And I'm like, hey, let me check this out. This would be kind of interesting to see what they come up with.
Yes. It's
And not
awesome.
everybody's okay with that. And they're like,
Right.
I don't
It's
know, man.
scary, right? Like, scary for people because they feel like they're going to not have any control,
Yeah.
right? And that's like giving up, quote, unquote, "control" to somebody that maybe it feels like a stranger, can be very scary, but yeah, I actually have, a couple clients who are, embarking on that journey, and that's one of the things that's so great about having stepped aside from the clinical mental health field and kind of been on my own, is
Yeah.
that I can talk about those things. Those are not things that I could talk about when I was, working corporate mental health. They were like, "No, no, we don't talk about the weird spiritual stuff. We don't talk about the psychedelics. We don't that's not the thing. You
But
can't do
but it's
that."
not, it's weird to most people, but think about it, because a lot of times people, talk about energy. It's like you feel this weird energy coming from people. So then explain it to
Mhm.
me what that is you're feeling then.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I mean. It's like, everybody's like, oh, that's just weird. I'm like, is it really? Well, think about it. Because if you get a weird vibe from somebody, you're reading their energy.
Uh-huh.
You see their body language, you're reading their body, you're reading the body language. Obviously, you can tell something's wrong. A lot of times with people, you can notice certain things, or you feel that weird like energy. And like I wouldn't really know much about it until I met my wife, and she was big in the whole energy thing and started educating me a little
Yeah.
more on it. And I've always had that sense, like you could
Yep.
just feel weird things about people,
Mhm.
like they get all weird vibes, or you just had this weird energy that you just don't like. And then
Mhm.
it turns out they're just not good people, and it's like, well, it makes sense why I felt that way then. And in
Right.
traditional therapy, they'll just not even talk to you about it. But a lot of this other stuff, these spirituality ones and all the different things that they touch into, it's a lot of that is what it has to do with is the negative energy people give off and
Mhm.
things like that. And it all makes sense to me. And I'm like, I think
Yeah.
just people need to be open minded about a lot of this stuff because a lot of this stuff, honestly, you never know. It could relate to you more than you actually think it does.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I find that in my practice a lot. I mean, it's pretty obvious if you look at me and, you see purple hair, you're like, I'm probably not going to get the cookie cutter, whatever, right? But I find that that's a lot of people are scared or they're uneducated about like some of those spiritual concepts. And if you
Yeah.
kind of just give it as information versus and something to think about versus, just kind of telling them they're wrong for whatever they think, people are way more receptive to be more curious, and you kind of bridge the gap. I always talk about feeling like that's what I was like put on this earth to do is to be a bridge between, certain things and being a bridge between like people who, just kind of run around and feel, kind of like quote unquote normal. And then, those
Yeah.
of us who
Yeah.
are out here like
Yes.
in the
Notice
ethers, right?
Notice quote unquote normal is said,
Yeah.
because explain to me what normal is nowadays, okay? Because
Yeah.
anything is not normal. I don't
Yeah.
think
There's no such
anybody's actually
thing.
normal.
Yeah, there's no such thing, and I forget who it was that said this, but it really rooted in me was that, things that are common, just because they're common doesn't make it normal, and I think that
Yeah.
that's really what we're calling when we talk about normal, we're talking about things that are common, and, when you actually break down some of the things that are common, it's like, I don't know if that's, like, normal in terms of, natural, right? Which is what I think we're actually trying to get at. When I'm saying, "Hey, is that normal?" It's, "Is that natural? Is that a human thing? Is that something that I could be expecting or should be expecting? Or is that something that I should be taking care of because it's, like, not good?"
Like the new version of what is it? Expecting what to expect when you're expecting. There you go.
Yeah. Right. People wanna know, feel safe, right?
Right.
But,
Yeah.
and then there's lots of different other things that go with the word normal, but that's one of the main things that I always want people to understand is common isn't normal. That don't make those things the same because normal for each person is, again, different. We are so
Yeah.
individual,
Yeah.
and, I mean, it's wild to really think about that and what I've discovered, sitting down with enough people and being like, "Wow, people really are very different." Even people who look the same on the outside,
Right.
or maybe they do the same thing for a job or, they're just different people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree that 100%. Like I work in retail, man, and some of these people come in, they say the wildest things to you, and if you sit there and really just listen to some of them, and you're just like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting." Like you can't really
Mhm.
respond, obviously, but you start taking a catalog of the strange events of things that people say to you, and
Yeah.
people are so like worried about, oh no, the self checkouts are going to steal my credit card. I'm like, if that's what your biggest worry is, I think we got problems here, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like they are so offended by self checkouts, man. Like they're like, well, I got to
Yeah.
check myself out. They always make that comment. Well, I got to check myself out. I'm like, you don't have to. I'm standing right here. But
Yeah,
okay,
right.
you don't have to. There's a line, and they're like, oh, it's just gonna take forever. As long as it takes. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different problem. Everybody has a different need. Everybody has a different way to do things. Or they get
Yeah.
mad at you about something else, like their car don't work. Oh, start throwing their hands in the air, and you're just watching them. You're just smiling, like it's like you're at the zoo, basically. You're sitting there watching the
Yeah.
animals just react.
Watching
I know
people's
how bad
behavior
that
is
sounds. I know how bad
fascinating.
that sounds, but that's
No,
what it's
no, because
like.
it's fascinating, right? Like, you become a researcher when you decide that that's, what you've discovered about people. You're like, "Oh, like, I'm gonna observe all of them, not because I want to judge them, because I'm interested in the fact that this is happening."
You
Right?
know,
The
it
same way that we watch a movie, like, "This is very interesting. I'd like to see what's going to happen next."
It's funny you say movie too, because if you go back and watch some of them, you notice all the weird little quirks and things that you don't notice the first time through
Yes.
them. Like the Ninja Turtles one, I have to go back and watch. They said that at one point you can see the guy inside the suit in the mouth. His eyes appear in the mouth of the suit. I'm like, I've seen this movie 1,000 times. I've never looked
Yeah,
for that. Or was it
never.
3 minute little baby, the little cardboard cutout in the back corner of the room? They thought was a ghost or somebody that died on the set or whatever that was.
Mhm.
There's just weird things you notice if
Yeah.
you actually go back and really look for them. There's different things where you can tell they've chopped it up a bit, like Detroit Rock City. When they're in the car with the pizza lands sauce down, and the guy's right between his thighs, whatever. And then when it comes back, the pizza's reversed, and the cheese side is down, the sauce side is up. Things like that you don't
Yeah,
notice, and it's just
yeah,
smallest things too. Like it's the smallest things. If you're not watching for them, you don't see them, and it's the same thing. Like thing with people now, it's just like you say therapy to them, and they're just like, oh, I'm not crazy. Who said you're crazy?
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean that analogy that or not analogy, but that story that you're telling is what I end up doing a lot of times in my sessions is we go back into the movie of your life and look and look
Right.
at the things we missed, right? Like when was the cheese side up and I thought the sauce side was up,
You
like
know, and
really
like I said,
looking
it's the
in and
weirdest things. It's the
reframing all of your
smallest things that you
stories.
notice, and they're just right there. And it's like, I think it's the same thing applied to mental health. Like there's little quirks that a lot of people miss early on. Like people misdiagnose things all the time, and then they get all mad. It's like, no, like they did what the information they had at that time. I'm like, did they
Yeah.
purposely do it? I don't think they did it purposely. That's a lot of times with the school systems and stuff. They're like, we hire these experts to
Yeah.
come in and do things for you. But it's like, you can only do so much, and you can only diagnose the things you see because sometimes they don't show up till later. And then it's like, all right, well then just go back and get a second opinion like you would do with any doctor. Hey, you don't like what they're saying, go back and see. I mean, maybe it's something different that you didn't catch or they didn't catch. And it's just crazy. It really is. It gets kind of crazy with it because there's so much misinformation out there and people are just willing to believe whatever they see that the popular idea is at the time.
Yeah, well, because
It
it feels safe, I mean, I think the thing about it is that labels feel safe.
Mhm.
Labels feel like they give, information, but then we get upset because the information isn't correct. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like, even when we say, like, "Hey, the name of this is Pete versus anxiety," like, anxiety to you and anxiety to me may mean different things, so I might just come in with a preconceived notion of who you are because of the word anxiety being
Right.
something that you would describe yourself as having. And once you get to know somebody, you can find all kinds of different things that present as anxiety that are really just belief systems. And we all operate from our belief systems. We judge people from our belief systems, and it's so quick and it's so subconscious that we have to interrupt that process if we want to change the way that we see people and interact with people and view people,
Oh, no,
so
you're
that
gonna
we
you're gonna get us canceled. You said change now, that's it. All the people like, "The mass hysteria, Godzilla's coming." "Ah," kinda thing. All gonna be running and screaming now because you said the word change.
Yeah, yeah, well, people are afraid of change unless they are guaranteed that it's gonna be good, right?
Exactly, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
Like,
get that.
my life will change drastically if I win the lottery tonight, right? Like, that feels like it would be a good change. Meanwhile, if
Yeah.
you go look back at some of the people who've won the lottery, it was not a good change. It actually ruined their lives
Yeah.
because of lack of boundaries with people and, just all kinds of other stuff that's happened. So, I mean, if there's any other way to describe the fact that we're just running around with our own belief systems, seeing everybody through that lens, and it gets us in trouble, I mean, there it is.
Everything gets you in trouble these days, okay? You can't say something wrong to somebody without them being too upset about it because it hurt their feelings because it's not their ideal system. You didn't say something they like, so now we gotta go cancel everybody, and it's like, okay,
Well, because people
it's
don't
true.
these skills that we're talking about that I teach all the time have fallen by the wayside for many reasons. I feel like I give people a lot of credit and a lot of, benefit of the doubt because, they're not really taught how to handle these emotions anymore, right? And so it's like war on everything feels like that's what we should do. When historically, if we look back, war never really does anything. So, right, like
Well, it
how many
does
times are we
something.
going to continue to do it? Right? Yeah,
It
it
does
does
something. It
something, but
causes
then
a
we
lot
have
of
to have another one.
PTSD and stuff. Yes, it causes a
Yeah,
lot of that. There's enough of that out there that people don't think war is great, but you don't think of the second half of what's going to happen when people come back, and then the mental state they're altered in when they've had to take someone else's life because,
right,
all because of war. Like Vietnam was like their kids are like young as 15 are out there fighting a war that they're led to believe that it's a right to go, and then the person on the opposite side, and it's just crazy. It just is, and
right.
people just want, but they don't think of the other side of the coin.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
it's
it,
a skill. You have to learn that skill. That is a skill that we have to learn of, and I can remember, I teach the pause in my therapy sessions all the time, and it's like I can remember being a child and somebody trying to teach it to me, but I didn't understand the concept because it was incomplete. It was the, count to 10 before you do anything kind of situation. And it was like I would count to 10, but I was just getting more mad or more upset or whatever during that time because nobody told me what I was supposed to be doing
Exactly.
mentally during that time. But that's the thing that people are missing, is that they're jumping right to reaction because your trauma comes in when it's triggered, and that's just it. Your brain's job is to keep you safe, and anything that feels unsafe, its job is to jump in as quickly as possible, because even when it sounds like you shouldn't be in danger, right? Like if somebody says something to me that hurts my feelings, I'm not in danger, right? But my nervous system perceives danger and impending danger. So I have to interrupt that process of getting upset and saying, I don't need to do anything right now. I'm not actually in danger. I can think about why that person would actually say that instead of reacting right away and feeling like I have to go to war with them right this second because they upset me.
Yeah.
And it's just a skill that we haven't learned because our society got, way more busy. Parents aren't around because they're working, like just the mental health field got crazy. So there's a lot of
Damn it,
things not
COVID.
being
Look what
taught.
you did, COVID. You caused mass
Yeah.
hysteria now. Look at you go.
But even
Godzilla's coming
before
back, and
that,
Godzilla's being
I can
represented by
remember
COVID.
way back when I was in college, we thought that everything was a chemical imbalance that just happened, and
Yeah.
like I can remember being taught that, and now we just know better, where we're like, that it doesn't just like happen. One day you wake up and now all of a sudden your brain doesn't know how to make serotonin. Like that's
Yeah.
not how it happens. We got to look at like all the different things, your diet, your lifestyle, your environment, your trauma, all of those things affect your body and your body chemicals.
Yeah.
But again, like that's a tall ask to use to educate people that way, especially in the school system, which is, where you would get this education, I feel like, because again, going back to it, your families are busy right now. They don't have time for the connectivity and the explanations and teaching, hey, you don't have to get upset about everything. Even if you
I
feel upset, you don't have to do upset things.
I mean, I can't get mad because I want to be mad. Damn.
No, you
Damn
can get
these
mad, you
feelings.
just can't act out, right? Like, that's the thing about it, right? Like, we all have anger, we're supposed to. It's
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
our
It's a normal human
part of our
emotion.
makeup.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
supposed to punch holes in the wall just because we're angry.
Well, maybe I just like punching holes in walls. I call it
You
redecorating. I mean,
might.
I guess,
Yeah,
it's
you
just,
might, but there's a consequence to it, right? And that's the part where we're like, "I don't want a consequence."
yeah,
Like,
exactly. There's
I
always
just
that
wanna
flip
be
side
able
of
to
the coin.
do
They're
it.
like, oh yeah, there's the other side I'm not thinking of because I see red and then I'm just gonna get mad and start punching holes in things and yeah, not a real great outcome there, guys. But okay, sure, why not?
Yeah, well, because it feels again like the brain gets triggered. There's a lot of energy in the body. You're not supposed to hit a person, right? And this all happens within a split second because it's subconscious. So you hit the wall because you need the energy to go somewhere. But if you
Yeah,
understand that that's what's happening to your body when you get upset, you figure out different ways to manage the energy than punching holes in the wall. But it takes time and it takes patience and it takes somebody to teach you how to do it.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing is that people should never be feel like they're too old to learn something new because you can learn new things every day.
Mm,
Educate yourself better to better react to things versus reacting at all or bottling it up and then it just getting pushed all the way down and just go
mhm.
shoot
Yeah.
off one day and you just go completely berserk and not go completely out of control. And this all could have been avoided had you just kind of learned how to just ease out of it and not bottle it up and not push it back down and things like that. And it's crazy, really it is. I mean, but it happens. Like,
Yeah.
people have breakdowns and things like that and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And I mean, it's just get back up from the end of the day is really what it matters because a lot of
Yeah.
people come in the comeback is better than the beginning of it, as a lot of
Mhm.
people like to say, and it's just crazy, really, honestly.
Yeah, if you can learn from it, then you've succeeded. And
I
that's
agree.
really what I feel like when we realize, I'm not perfect. Just because I've been doing this forever doesn't mean that random things that I'm not prepared for don't like throw me off. Of course
Yeah.
they do. They're random things I wasn't prepared for,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's like you said, do I recognize? Can I recognize the signals in my body before I take action that's gonna hurt me or somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the skill, right? But if
Yeah.
for some reason I miss it, then learn, I make that promise to myself of saying, I do not like how that went. And so I'm going to go into my belief system, which is the thing that made me mad to begin with. I felt like something went against my belief system. And I'm going to talk to myself about how that belief system got here and whether or not it serves me.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. That's just crazy. So let's talk about your new podcast a little bit. So I know you were telling me you've recorded 7 episodes basically, and it's just you. Do you have plans of having guests later down the road, or is that just kind of like you just haven't gotten that far? And
So, yes and no. So, when I started the podcast a while back, I had a number of clients that were asking me, "Hey, it would be really nice to have like maybe some bite-sized content for me to think about maybe in between sessions because sometimes it's really hard when something comes up. It's like an on the spot thing. And so you want to be able to journal sometimes in the moment. And, nobody wants to pay me to journal for an hour. And I understand that. So, like here, my idea was let me put some stuff out there, for that. And then also, not everybody has the ability to see me for multiple reasons. I don't have all the time in the world either. So
yeah,
if I can help by giving some people information that I would give to my clients bit by bit, I'm into it for that. So that was the beginning of it was kind of asked for. And then a while back, a few years ago, I used to do a live, I don't know if you want to call it a show or whatever. I would just live go on Facebook and talk to people about psychology and things. And I did have a couple guests on there. They all happened to be men because I wanted to give men a voice, right? Like in the field of mental health. And then I believe it was right after, like not soon after the COVID situation, like everything changed for my life and I had to, kind of cut everything off. So I'm in this place of knowing that I want interviews also. I don't want it to just be me, but I want those 2 things to be separate. So my decision being that, the Psych Gym is going to be more of, just that the psychology based stuff, the concepts. The guests on the Psych Gym will be people who work in the field and have, like that practical information. And then like the side project, I'll go back to those interviews because I really did love those interviews. I loved the same thing like what you're saying and what you're doing. Giving people a voice is really powerful. And the people that I did interview were people that I knew, but what ended up happening was when I cut it off and I didn't want to, I had a list of people who wanted to be on there and wanted their voice to be heard. And that told me a lot about, a couple things, the spaces that you can bring to the world that are safe for people, it's so important, right? Because these were live. They were on Facebook live talking about these things, but they really wanted to. But in their regular lives, it was hard to. And that's where I was like, oh, that's so strange to me. That's why those spaces are important because it gives people like, I don't know, a veil or something so that they'll tell their story and feel like they've gotten something out, get something out. So, yeah, I mean, that was my long-winded way of saying that I've got the podcast, the Psych Gym, which is, more of that psychology, and then coming soon, question mark, is the revival of the conversations with
yeah.
people telling their actual stories.
Yeah, that like I said, when I did this one originally, I already knew from the get go it was going to be me with people just sharing their stories and
Mm,
everything like that. Which I think, like it's a great idea. The Psych Gym's a great idea in general, just because you can educate more people in a broader scale, and you can reach farther corners of the world just by
exactly.
alone. The internet alone gets us access to that too, and things like
Mhm.
that. And the same thing with right now. We're on the 365 radio. We're reaching everywhere you can think of and people can hear our
Absolutely.
conversation and stuff like that. And if they don't, it's here on Facebook or it's here on YouTube. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
It'll be here. It's not going anywhere. It's here, I mean, and things like that. But from the beginning, that's what I had planned on doing. And
Love that.
there's some I don't think to this week, to this day I'd have had any problems. I mean, I run into problems. You have people cancel on you and change
Sure.
things up. But I get the part where a lot of people want to be on it. A lot of people want to be on it, and then they're like, "Oh, you're not
Mhm.
open till July." I'm like, I try to tell y'all to get in while you could. This is not my fault.
Yeah. You're not the
This
only one who
obviously
wants to
has
tell your
enough noise
story.
that wants, you know what I mean? It's like, you understand what I'm talking about. It's just so
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like people understand the flip side of what we do. And
Yeah.
my guest earlier, she knew too. She was right a part of it. She was like, she's giving a lot of women voices and building a community and things like that. And
Love that.
and she said in the first episode she had dropped in May, she had 6,000 people clicking on that. I was like, dude, 6,000. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. People
And like I
wanna
said,
hear the stories, they just
mhm.
do. I mean, I do. I'm, like, always on YouTube listening to whatever it is I'm interested in. I wanna hear a story about somebody who did it or conquered it or is doing it.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. Some of them my wife doesn't approve of, but it's okay. I just listen to a lot of them. I just listen because a lot of times I just like the talking, the people constantly conversating about different topics, and I listen to everything. I listen to some
Mhm.
weird ones and some other ones. Another one of my guests, Melissa Kim Quarter, she has her own. It's called a dose of God. What is it? I can't think of what the top of my head is now, but she has one too. I've been listening to hers as well, and she said she'd invite me to come on because I was like, oh hey, you can invite me to come on, and she was laughing. She's like, well, not yet, maybe down the road. I'm like, oh, listen, don't forget about me now, okay? We can talk about anything you want. I'm down with this.
Yeah, yeah. When once you learn how to use your voice too, I mean, I really think it's like you claim a responsibility to use
Yeah,
your voice, right? Like once
yeah,
you realize how important it is, you're like, "Oh yeah, I wanna use it for sure."
yeah, for sure. And then it's like, do you use your powers for good or bad? And it's like,
Yeah.
then you start to realize some things after a while, just like lottery winners do, that who your real friends are and things like that. Because I did doing a cleanse from social media, so I really haven't been active until
Okay.
today, really, honestly. And I just been taking mental notes of certain things and noticing certain things. And
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, when you don't hear from me, then you'll know that you didn't fit into the parameters of what I'm doing at this point, because I can't let you
Mhm.
hold me back to get to where I want to be, because everybody wants to be here, but are you
Mhm.
adding value is the real question I have to ask myself and reevaluate a lot of things like that. It's like, are you adding to the show? Or are you taking from it? Because you just want to come on here and say that you're on a podcast. It just doesn't work like that for me.
Mhm.
You have to add value to the topic I'm at now. Like, you
Mhm.
want me to do separate one where we just do a general conversation. I've done that. Trust me, it doesn't work too great. I'm not that funny at that way. So
Yeah.
and the conversation got too crazy and things like
Oh,
that.
no.
And I mean, it's you gotta know when to cap it, because you have to know your audience and
Right.
what stuff you can get away with and what stuff you can't say. And it's just like it's just some of these you listen to, it's just insane, like the topics they come up with.
I'm
And a lot
sure.
of them, are
Yeah.
like the comedians and stuff, and they have a whole in their sense of level of humor that they're talking
Right.
about things. And
Yeah, I bet.
it's just crazy though. But I'm glad though
Yeah,
you
I
got it
bet.
going though, because I remember that
Yeah.
we talked last, you had you had mentioned it to me, and I was like, oh, what's the new one? What's the new project? And you were like, well, I'm not really sure yet about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it
And
takes a while for me. I mean, I think, even with everything, I'm a single mom and my daughter homeschools so it's just us. And so what I had to learn was that everything takes some time, takes
yeah.
maybe more time than some people who have more time than me, so I've learned to not let my anxiety, right? Because that's what used to be like my anxiety would come in and be like, well, you're not doing it fast enough. You got to do it. You got to do it. And I'd be
Or
like,
you're worried, you're like, oh my God, people aren't
okay.
gonna like it, or people are gonna like this, or people are gonna
Yeah.
want it. Yeah.
Freaking out all the time. I mean, when I say like I mean, I had the highest anxiety that I like now I'm looking back like I don't think I could manufacture that. Like I can't be that anxious ever again, but it was so horrible. I mean, I
Hmm.
remember sitting down on a couch with my friends and I was holding on to a pillow and like just holding it close to me while we were talking. And I was like, maybe even like rocking a little bit. And he looked at me and he said, "You all right?" And I was like, "I'm fine." You know
I
what
was
I
like, I'm
mean?
doing okay. So I back
I'm
and forth. I'm
fine,
all right.
right? But he could see, you know what I mean? Like, he's
Yeah.
looking like, "You're not fine," but to me, that was my normal running speed, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that was, just hold it together, literally hold it together kind of situation. And, working through that and having to, like, manage my own high anxiety, I have the empathy for everybody, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't really matter. I was a therapist then too, and like still had a rough time with it. So, hearing people's stories, I feel like helps people understand that, you know what I mean? Of like nobody's immune to this kind of stuff. It just comes
Yeah.
out differently, and that we don't have to worry about it being the worst thing on earth because we can change it if we feel like we, you know, want to and can.
Yeah, the great thing about having experts such as yourself on here is that people can see that it's not what they think everything's like. It's not like somebody sitting with a pen and paper, sitting there analyzing. You're like, oh, okay, so tell me more about your mom. You know what I mean? It's just a casual conversation. A lot of times, it's just how it flows. Usually, it's just two people having a conversation. Except for one person understands your brain and how everything breaks it down and all the other things, and help identify these things so you can get the help you need and help you work through some of the issues, and make things easier to go through your daily life with. Because my first guest was Teddy, and Mr. Colgate. He had PTSD, what is it, traumatic brain injury, and a couple other things. And he was saying that for him to go outside, to literally just go to the store and come back, it is just that's so draining. He's just like, yeah, I'm done for the day. I need to take a rest.
Man.
And people don't realize that's what he deals with every day,
Yeah.
and it's different when it comes from him versus me telling you about it. If he's the one
Mhm.
saying it, it's a whole nother person saying it.
Yeah.
And and the stuff like that. It's like, and being shocked, there ain't no one has been more shocked than I have been sitting in this seat, because there's a woman
Mm.
that I had on here named Brandy, great guest. She was telling us that she had passed away technically for 5 minutes on the table, and was telling us what it was like. And like,
Amazing.
people just like don't believe something there's an
Yeah.
afterlife. And do you explain to me what the heck was going on in that
Oh,
situation? Because it's
uh-huh.
insane.
Yeah. I
And
love that.
people just reveal things all the time. And it's funny when you get them on a camera, they start talking, and they're just like, they get real comfortable. They'll start telling you things that you're not even seeing coming.
Yeah.
One of my
Yeah.
guests, she is like, well, I've never told anybody this. I'm like, oh, here we go, brace for impact, because we don't know what's coming next. The
Right.
minute
Yeah.
the words are, the minute the words, I haven't told anybody this, come out, you're like, here we go, here we go. What are you gonna say? Because you got to be ready for it and everything else like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I mean, like my life in a nutshell, right? But it's not live in front of everybody. But yes, I
yeah,
mean, and when you're the host, right? Like you're the space holder, that's exactly what it's like. 'Cause you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna keep this a safe place for you, even though I don't know how safe that, like I don't know how safe this
I
container,
don't know what topic we're
like,
gonna hit in the safe
yeah,
space, but
like
let's
is the
go, man. We
shield
got a
that big? We'll
we got the
find out.
elastic one. Don't worry, that sucker will bounce back in here. Let's
Yeah,
go for it. Let's go. The show's
yeah,
called
but
Anxiety
people,
for a reason. Trust me. We're gonna
yeah,
let this get chaotic as possible for you. Come on,
yeah,
let's go. And that's why
for
I tell people, I'm
sure.
like, I have the Patreon. I'm like, listen, if it's really intense, you need to let me know right now. I said we'll go separate. We can go quiet, one-on-one session in a Patreon conversation, and you could
Yeah,
just let it go. Just let everything go that you want to say right there. Because when we're live, you got to be careful with certain things, because YouTube does get a little mad
yeah,
because you say
yeah,
certain things it doesn't like. And like with any of these apps, I get what they're
right,
trying to do now is police a lot of this stuff. But I think at the same time, they need to understand the context of what you're saying, though. It's
right,
like, you're just making a point about, someone unaliving themselves, because, TikTok is big on that one. You have to be careful with
sure.
certain words you can't say will get you basically nerfed, and stuff like that. And you'll hear people saying things, and they'll say those kind of words, and you're thinking, okay, what is, and then you start to figure, oh, okay, I get it, see what's happening now.
Yeah,
And I get
yeah,
they're trying to police it, for that reason, because all the people are taking heat for it all the time. So these people writing crazy things on the internet, and all these different things they're planning on doing, and all these school shooters are putting these crazy things out there on their social media. It's not realizing people are going to go backtrack into that and go, oh, well, I could see what you said about 2 weeks ago.
right,
You were saying some wild things on here, and it's just
right.
this. It's crazy. It really is. It's just crazy just sitting in this seat, the things that you hear. And I'm pretty sure I've heard nothing close to anything yet that you've probably heard, but I'm sure we'll find some stuff going down the road here. It's going to
Absolutely.
get weird real quick for me.
Yeah, well, because people again, like when there's something about connectivity when we're having conversations that's very different. Even when you're having a conversation out loud with yourself, there's a different filter and there's a different energy, right? Like, and so when you start a conversation with people and you feel like you're in the same channel of energy, it will just flow. You know what I mean? And that it's almost like, when we joke about people, just kind of blacking out and like they don't know what happened. I think
Yeah.
that happens a lot is because they feel it. And then, like our words are energy. And so when we're purging and through a verbal outlet, it does feel good. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's easier to be brave when the river's flowing than to, try to do it in chunks or to do it on your own, right? Like it's yeah, I mean people feel very safe when they feel safe. And then here we are with the containers going, okay, right?
Hey
Like
guys, a little
I
too
have to
much
tell people, I
there.
got to remind you, if you say that you're going to hurt somebody or yourself and I believe you, I'm going to have to do
Yeah.
something. You know what I mean?
No, I
Like,
get
so
that too.
you
Yeah,
do
it's
have to
just
choose your words carefully, but it's good for you to choose your words carefully
yeah.
because sometimes we say things we don't mean. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
because we're doing it with our emotion and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, some of the things you hear and things like that, and it's just insane, man. Like it's just like you hear people talking about they want to, let go of everything and do these things, and then the split second decision happens. It's one
Yeah.
thing changes their mind and goes a different direction, and I'm sitting here pacing on, hanging on, because I think the craziest one so far to date was the Columbine school shooter person that was named Heidi. She was in the room with one of the shooters, and he was in the library. And I'm sitting there listening to this thing, and this is the audio side of the podcast. So I'm listening to this. I'm hyper focused hearing this, and I'm like, whew, I'm over sweating bullets. I'm like, oh
Sure.
shit, what's she
Yeah.
doing, man? She's like, I'm underneath the chairs, and I could see him right there, and I could see the white size. I'm like, I could feel it with you. I feel it with
Mhm.
you. And I had no idea that conversation was even going to take place because she was telling us about it. And then she started saying, well, I was in the library and started going into great detail. I'm like, all right, here we go. Like,
Mhm.
brace for impact, guys, because we don't know what we're about to get at this point. It's in my mind. I'm thinking this whole situation out. I'm just like, oh man, what are we about to hear next? And she's just
Yeah.
telling us, well, I saw the whites of his eyes. And I'm like, damn, dude, how close were you? You had to be if you're close to
Yeah.
see the whites of that guy's eyes, that is insane. And she's like, I saw somebody get popped right in front of me. I'm just like, okay, this is getting interesting quick, and it's like you don't know what to
Yeah.
say. And,
Right.
and and then it's like people say, like they lose somebody. And then we had this conversation earlier. Me and Jeanette were talking, and she's a host of rooted in her. Sorry if I get
Okay.
her podcast, and she was talking about, like, when someone passes, it's like, what do you say to people? I'm like, that's a
Mhm.
good question. I mean, honestly, you just say I'm sorry, and that's really how you say. You don't tell them anything else, because what else could you say to them? There's nothing else you can say to make it feel any better. You're not going to change the situation.
Mhm.
Necromancy is not a thing that we know that actually works. And all those other factors. Stop. Harry Potter is just made up. Okay, everybody, in case anybody
Yeah.
thinks that's real. I mean, you got to be careful about it and stuff you're messing with, and things like that. And it's just like, it was so powerful when she said it, because you think about it, it's like, what do you say to those people? Honestly, it's like
Yeah.
you don't know what to say to them,
Right. I mean, you
and I
offer support. I mean, I feel like that's what anybody ever needs, right? Like,
well,
is
you have those
just
people
to
also want to
know.
tell you like different things on how to do things, and it's like, yeah, I don't really care about your problems, or they want to tell you about their problems. And I told her about Jim Ross, which is this he was a wrestling announcer. He had lost his wife, and he had made this comment. He said, well, I don't give a bleep about your personal problems. I just lost my wife. I don't want to hear none of your shit. I have to deal
Mhm.
with my own problems now. And like, that's what we were talking about. And I was like, that to me was just so striking, because it's like, yeah, he's not wrong. It's like some people just want to tell you everything else, and it's like, dude, this is not the time. Like, censor yourself a little better than and just start trying to tell me your own problems when I've just lost somebody. Like like you said, just show support, and that could be anyways. Just say, hey, if you ever need something, call. Hey, I'm sorry. It's like, and it leads back to, what do you say to someone, because you don't know what's going to trigger them. They may get a little upset, they may not. I mean, no matter what you do, just understand they're grieving at this point. And it's not a fun thing to deal with, because once you lose somebody, it's like they're gone. They're not coming back. You can't
Mhm.
call that person. You can't email them. You can't text them. You can't even message them anymore. And it's just crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, and everybody has a different role in people's lives too, right? Like, so if you barely know somebody, the way that you support them might be different than, the way that I would support somebody in my space with grief. You know what I mean? Like, we talk about the weird things in there, about, like, hey, if you close your eyes and ask them a question, can you hear their voice? And we have conversations with, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
energetic conversations because it's soothing, you know what I mean? But that I would never do that like on the street to some random person because
Yeah.
that's not my role in their life, unless they
Well,
ask me to. But if it's our role in people's lives and, even broadening that out from grief, our role in people's lives is the situation, right? Like that's what's in front of us and we're trying to navigate what our role is in each moment and sometimes imperfectly.
yeah. Yeah. And I don't think there's really a perfect answer to anything, honestly, when it comes to that kind of stuff and all that, things like that. It's just like, it's just a normal motion to say you're sorry. And then you just like, what else do you say? It's like, it's hard. And then you watch these people struggling, and it's like, you want to help them, but there's only so much you can do for somebody, because they're all dealing with these things, and it's, like you said, hearing the voices of people and things like that. And it's like, they feel like they're still there, and it's just crazy. It really is. It just gets kind of crazy because it's like, when it comes to that situation, people tell you those stuff, and it's like, when I work, I've had people tell me they've lost people, and I'm just like, damn, I'm sorry. And it's how you go about it and how you say it to people too is like really what it
Mhm.
means. Because a lot of people can read fact or crap real fast when you're saying something to them. Now, you do that fake like, oh, I'm sorry thing. I could see them getting upset because it's like, but if you're just genuine with people and just honestly nice to them and just say, hey, I'm so sorry, best send my best regards and things like that, it's you get a different reaction from people. So
Yeah, and sometimes you can't control that no matter what you do, right? Like, I mean, one of the things that I teach a lot in sessions is that, like, you can come at people authentically, but how they're receiving it, you sometimes have no idea, right? So,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like, as you were talking, I was thinking about some of the people that are like, "Why would you say you're sorry? You didn't do it." And you're like, "You're right, I didn't. I'm not really sure what else to say," right? Like, I came at you with a very, what I felt was a very authentic,
Yeah.
"I feel for you" kind of statement, but the way that you heard it just hurt more than it helped, and so we kind of have to know that other people's reactions might be things that we have to, manage for ourselves, not manage for them, but manage for ourselves, and we're just always doing the best that we can. If we're doing the best that we can, that's when, we can kind of feel good about our ripple in the world, of this might not have been the most perfect moment, but, either I learned something or it was a seed planting moment, to kind of, take yourself out of the gravity of some of the things that, we just don't understand in the moment yet.
Yeah, yeah, I get that completely too. Or the butterfly effect applies to, one thing you do changes everything, or it
Yeah,
could
for
change,
sure.
that whole theory about like one thing can change something on the other side of the world, and all
Mhm.
those other
Yeah.
theories that come up are just, interesting to, to think about now because it's like, and so they'll say, well, the movie, and I'm like, yes, there's a movie. Yes, God forbid, there's not a movie about everything in these days,
Right. Right.
Shutter Island was the one where the guy was basically hallucinating the whole time, and they just let him keep playing through the scenario in his head that he's a
Mhm.
detective and all that other kind of stuff, and he escaped out of the jail cell and all that fun stuff. Or was it A Beautiful Mind? I think it was a great one though for schizophrenia though, because it gives
Yeah,
you a better
Beautiful Mind
idea
was
what
good.
people are looking at and things like that. And
Mhm.
and and, and it's just it's always interesting to see the other side when you're watching people go through these things. And one of my guests was actually advocating for the other side, where she's like, hey, well, what about us on this other side too? And I'm like, you're right. Let's. And so I literally moved some stuff around to put her on. I was like, no, we're going to put you on because we need to get this out there because this is a great point that
Mhm.
we don't look at the other side of the coin for the people that are the loved ones and everybody else trying to deal with these people that have these problems.
Mhm.
And it's just hard. I mean, it's a rough topic to talk about in general because you don't want people to think you're crazy at the end of the day, and that's a lot of people think. It's like when you start telling them some of these things and they go look up what some of these are, it's yeah, the perception changes real fast. They're like, "Ooh,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, all right,"
Mhm.
and just reading it doesn't mean you understand it. I mean, yeah, you can read a book, but do you really understand what you just read? I memean,
Right.
and that's the great thing about people, therapists, and people like yourself, and other people that understand these things. They can break it down to English for you a little more. And another guest I had, Dr. Tim, he was like he would tell you the technical side, but then he'd break it down to more of an understanding that everyday person can understand that hasn't studied the
Mhm.
field, that could have a little better idea of how to absorb it a little better versus just being left with these big words and you're just like, huh, what, huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's most of the problem, right? Is communication and comprehension. Sometimes our ships passing in the night, right?
Hmm.
Like when I work with couples, for instance, when we talk about communication, we're not talking about increasing communication. We're talking about figuring out why it's not working, right? Why it's not effective. What are the ships passing in the night? What's actually happening in my communication and your reception? Because if that's what's broken, then we figure out if there's different words that we need to use, or there's different tones that are helpful for this or for that. But that curiosity, I teach people curiosity over confrontation, because the more curious we can be and the more of a detective that we can be in any situation, really, it kind of takes the edge off,
Yeah.
of like, just kind of the seriousness of it, and brings it more into, curiosity, so we can share information. I feel like that's, something we've got to get better at if we're going to, make if we're going to help the mental health crisis. We need to get better at asking people questions instead of just thinking that we know everything and we know the way that things are supposed to be. That curiosity of like, well, how does it work for you? Because I do want to know how it works for you. It's
Yeah,
not
there's
that
nothing
big
wrong.
of a deal for me to do something a little bit different because I'm teachable, like, depending, right? And that's nobody wants to hear that these days, is like, it depends. We're like, no, I want 1, 2, 3 magic. I don't have
I'm gonna snap
time
my
for it
fingers and be
depends.
done, damn it. Come on now.
Yeah,
You have
I
a
don't have
good
time for it
fast food
depends.
version?
Right? Yeah, but that's how we've gotten deeper and deeper into this, is not having the conversations where we're curious and we're able to hear other people and we're able to understand the concept of, you know, my experience and your experience of the same event are both correct because they came through our lenses. But what's the problem we're trying to solve? That's what we
Exactly.
need to get at, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like the conversation isn't pushed enough either, too, and people are just, oh, they're quick to say that it's mental health for certain situations. Oh, this guy's mental health. How do you know? Did you look into it? Did you do ask any questions? Did you really analyze what you're looking at there? Or are you just giving it a label really quick because you feel like, okay, well, boom, that's what we're gonna put it under, so that's fine. We can just brush it under that one; it'll be fine. And then that's the issue, is that not enough people know enough. And at the split side, like you said, they just, a lot of people don't want to know, though, that they don't want to listen, or they don't like it because it doesn't fit into their parameters of
mhm,
what they want. And
yeah.
it's like it's, that's why I ask people, though. I ask people all the time, well, how's your mental health? When I go live on TikTok, that's usually my first question. Anybody comes in, hey, how's your mental health today? Because really, honestly, if you think about it, when you ask somebody that question, you're not asking them, hey, how are you? You're asking them, hey, how's your mental health? Now they got to think
Sure.
about that for a minute, and they're like, wait, hold up.
Yeah.
This makes sense now. Wait a minute. Now he's asking a deeper question than just, hey, how are you? He's like, hey, how's your mental health? Then you're just like, wait, how is it? And then
Uh-huh.
it starts the thought process, the wheels going. And I had a friend of mine, Ken, he had asked somebody that too. And he said, this guy just started unloading on him, just started telling him a bunch of stuff and things like
Mm,
that. And it's like, see, I'm
mhm.
telling you, think about it, how far that question goes. Like, you're not just doing the
Sure.
basic, hey, how are you? It's, hey, how's your mental health? And then, people have to stop and think for a minute and go, oh, well, that's actually a good question. How is my mental health today? Because a lot of people don't
Right.
think about it.
Sure. Well, because sometimes it's a scary question,
Hmm.
right? Like, I do not wanna think about it because it might not be pretty, because I can
Right.
feel that it's not pretty, you know what I mean? Like, I wanna give you the short answer because I'm not ready to give the long answer.
Or
I
it's,
don't
you
wanna
don't
go
want to
there.
listen to what I'm saying and things like that. And they feel like people don't want to hear what they're going to say. But it's like, when you ask that question, be prepared for what they say next, because remember, now you're asking them a deeper question than just how are
Mhm.
you doing. You're asking them how's their mental health. So don't jump to a conclusion when they tell you something that is new to you, and then you're just like, whoa, hold up, wait a minute, what did he just say? It's like,
Yeah.
better understand that when you're asking that question, you're get ready for the real answer that you're about to get next, because you don't know what they're going to say next, because you don't know what everybody's mental health is. You don't know the guy walking down the street,
Mhm.
and anything like that. And the people that you see every day, you don't know what they deal with on a daily basis. It's like, unless they truly tell you something, you have no idea what they deal with. And just being nice to people, just be nice and hi to someone and say, hey, I like your shirt, or something like that could change their life right there. You could just made their day.
100%. Yeah,
And when it
absolutely.
comes to, all that other, suicide awareness, it's like, a lot of people are just like, what could I done more? Well, sometimes there's nothing you can do. You could try, check
Mhm.
in on that person you haven't heard from in a while. Random people on the street, hey, I like your shirt. If you like their shirts, hey, I like your shirt. Because you don't know, that right there, boom, could have made them like, hey, man, this guy noticed my shirt. He liked it. He could have made the highlight of their week right there. Hey, this guy
Right.
said he likes my shirt.
Yeah.
And it's, that's what I'm pushing for, is that, this is a safe space for people to come here and say things. Please understand when I tell you all this, that you can come here and say whatever you want. If you're going to say something or it's going to get really intense, we can do a quiet session between the two of us, and you could just
Sure.
lit rip and things like that. We just, with
Mhm.
social media, we just have to be careful how we go about it, because a lot of the stuff you say can get us flagged. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure that there's that space for someone to come here, share their story, people like Vanessa to come on and educate a lot of us on different things, and let them know that, hey, there's other things out there. Like, if therapy ain't for you, there's tons of other things you can try out there nowadays,
Sure.
or quantum healing, like I'm going to try, and I'll let y'all know how that goes, and things like that. There's different ways to go about this thing. It's not just therapy and pills,
Mhm.
and that's the
Yeah,
scary part, is that, because with addiction, that's how addiction starts. So you have mental health problems, and then you start taking
sometimes,
pills to try
yeah.
and fix the things, and then it just one takes over the other, and then it's just you got a whole list of problems going on there,
Right.
and the statistic of 2% is just freaking nuts, though, honestly, because 2% of people in recovery make it out.
Yeah.
What about the another 98% that fall back in? We just forget about them?
Yeah, well, having worked in recovery, it's kind of like doing the work that I do, I've been very jaded about the systems, very, very, which is, probably why I landed where I am of just being on my own and being like, I want nothing to do with any of these systems because you watch how broken the systems are. You watch how they aren't, you watch how the 2% happens.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and,
Yeah.
I would sit in, I worked in detox, which is, like to me, like a really hard place to be. And you'd sit there and go, this is a very expensive place. And they're not giving the same kind of help that like a free AA meeting gives. Like, this is insane. Like
It's funny you say AA,
this
though,
is
because
why.
a lot of people I've talked to that are in recovery said that AA doesn't work for them, which I mean, yet again, same thing. Therapy don't work for everybody. AA don't work for everybody.
Exactly.
There's sometimes you just got to wake up and want to do it yourself and just they say that now's the time for me to take ownership of my life. And it's just crazy. 2% is just so crazy. Like that number is just insane. It's like out of 98, out of 100% of people, there's 2% that are making it. It's just like, guys, that should already be an alert alarm that, hey, we got to do something. This is crazy.
Well, and I
Like,
will tell you this. I will tell you this about statistics, about how I feel about statistics. I feel like they're a lot of times very incomplete
yeah,
because you
no,
know
I
what I
get that.
mean? Like
Yeah,
like how much do they really follow people and how many people really get their voice heard, right? You know what I mean? And I think that that's
hmm,
like the longevity of it, right? So like what's the 2% within a certain time period, but when you look at the factors of people's lives and you look at the ways that things are done, you can kind of see where the other 98% went. You know what I mean? Like if
yeah,
you're going to like a crappy facility that doesn't really care about
yeah,
you,
yeah.
then
I
it's
get
not
that
really
completely.
you failing at your sobriety. It's that you didn't get the right kind of support to help you, right? But you then become part of that statistic, you know, and
Yeah, and I
and
think with the
and, and it's
statistic too, I
it's
wonder if the two
deceiving.
percent is really 2%, or maybe it's less than 2% though, too. Because like
Well,
you're
I think it's
saying,
a
like,
time period. I think over time, there's a lot more people that do actually get sober than we
yeah,
realize, but it's over time, and then they have to self-report that. And who's keeping track of somebody who,
exactly.
went to the rehab 10 years ago and then and now in the last 3 years has been sober.
Didn't you know they're microchipping all of us now? They can track
Yeah.
all of our movements, our cell phones, and my Alexa's listening to all my
No, they're just making
conversations.
shit up. Yeah. Always be ready for the
It's all those other conspiracy theories that come out. Is I know Alexa's listening to my conversation. Alexa's hearing some weird ass conversations. I'll tell you that much because I don't know what to tell
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. Oh, for
So
sure.
all right, guys, it's time to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Vanessa, as always, thank you so much for coming back. I know last time was disaster. This time was actually really fun. I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear the
today
new
worked.
podcast is taking off and everything else like that. And I look forward. I'll definitely be checking it out for sure because it's definitely something I want to listen to and see
Sure.
and stuff like that. And
For sure.
and we'll keep in touch. As we already technically do, anyways. We already follow each other on Instagram and everything else, and we talk
Heck
here and
yeah.
there, and we comment each other's posts and all that great stuff. So let me ask you the all important question: if you had one message to the world, if I could talk today, it'd be great. One message to the world, what would it be?
You're worth it. That was just like off the cuff. I didn't even I mean, it was just what fell out of my mouth. I just don't think that enough people can really see the future, when they're in the bad spot, right? But every single person is worth everything. You're worth a conversation, you're worth the work that it takes to bring you to a different place. You're worth it. Like you just are.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. And do you want to plug your socials and where they can find you and where your podcast is at and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So, the psychgym.com is my website. All the links are kind of there. I do have an Instagram for the Psych Gym. It's very inactive, because again, kind of new. My pseudo professional Instagram is csea.stars.psych. And on that, you see a lot of my personal life. That's something that I've tried to weave in because I just think it's important for people to see me as a real person. And yeah, so you can reach me on either one of those if you've got any more questions or want to see what I'm up to. It's usually out there.
Right,
But I
exactly.
appreciate you having me on, and I'm so
Definitely.
glad that it worked out today.
Of course, yeah, definitely. We'll have to have you come back later on and see how it's going.
Mhm.
Check in on the Psych Gym, see how it's going, all that stuff like
Sure.
that. By
Yeah,
the
I
way,
better hurry up because I mean it's already going to be the end of 2025 before I'm back on.
you might want to get in there before that book's past 20 July, man. You don't want to be missing out on this opportunity now, damn it. And by the way, I got somebody here in the comments from YouTube said, "Thank you for your time and words."
Yes. Yes, you're welcome. I'm always willing to whatever love I can spread out into the world, I am here for it because
Yeah,
I
I
know we
agree.
need it.
I think we need more positivity and negativity these days, and things like that. But
That is the
you
truth.
know, well, guys, that wraps up another episode of Pete versus Anxiety. Once again, Vanessa, thank you so much for coming. You guys know where to find me. I'm pretty much everywhere now: X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Heck, I go live on TikTok sometimes. You'll catch me there, guys. And things like that. I am working on a Discord where I'll funnel everything straight into. Everybody can see all the information they need, all that kind of stuff. If you want to sit here in the chair right next to me, guys, just go ahead and reach out to me. I am booked out to July 2025. Please save all your groans and moans until later. I don't know what to tell y'all. It's just demand. Okay, it's just what it is. I'm sorry, I'm on demand and everything like that. So, and as always, guys, it costs nothing. It costs nothing to be nice to somebody. One kind of act you do could save somebody's life. Hell, you could even make their day. Until next time, guys, I'll catch you next week, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time here on Pete versus Anxiety. You guys have a great day.